Welcome back to the channel, Most Highly Guided. My name's Lisa, if you don't know and you haven't watched any of the videos. We are here to do the next chapter of The Return of the Gods. If you haven't watched the other videos, then please go check them out. They are all here so you can catch up and then join us where we are. This book is like modern day apostasy and then ancient times, how things played out in ancient times and how they're playing out in the world today. Because as it was in the beginning, so shall it be at the end. So it's very eye-opening of how it falls in, and as the book goes on, I think it gets more interesting. So yeah, bear with it, guys, if you're not finding it informative, but I hope that you are. So we're on chapter 16, the Golden Calf Civilization. So we're just gonna jump straight in, guys. Before we move to the second god of the Dark Trinity, we must return to the ancient mountain for one more revelation, the prototype. The first cause of national apostasy recorded in Scripture was that of Israel's fall of Mount Sinai. While Moses stood on the mountaintop receiving the Ten Commandments, the people of Israel waited at the mountain's base, growing impatient at his delayed return. They decided to make a god of a molten metal in the image of an eagle, a bull calf. After creating the idol, they held a celebration in its honor. They feasted and drank with music and festivity, offered up sacrifices on its altar, and as the scriptures record, corrupted themselves. Then came judgment. What happened at Sinai was a prototype and template of national apostasy. The template is now replaying in America and Western civilization. The central elements of that prototype have reappeared. The departure from the word and ways of God, the rejection of the Ten Commandments, the process of deification, the worshipping and serving idols, and the replacement of God with a flood of sensuality and licentiousness. And in the case of America, we may add in the actual creation of a molten image of a bull family and the actual striking down of the Ten Commandments. The face of Moses. There is another element from the apostasy of Sinai, the face of Moses, gazing down in anguish at his nation's fall. There is on Capitol Hill in the chamber where the House of Representatives convenes a face. It has a unique face, the only full-face representation in that chamber. In fact, all the other faces in profile are turned to it. Is it the face of Moses? It gazes down at the speaker's podium. It looks down at the chamber's proceeding, voting and passing of legislation, and at the State of the Union address on the president. The face of Moses also appears on the wall of the nation's highest court. The most prominent figure in the Supreme Court eastern side is of that of Moses holding two tablets, just as he did on the mountaintop on the day of the golden calf. The tablets appear as well on the doors that lead to the Supreme Court chambers. So as Moses looked down in Israel's apostasy from Mount Sinai, we now look down from Capitol Hill in the nation's highest court. He looked down on the House of Representatives when it sought to enact laws that warred against the laws of God. He looked down on the president when he sought to advance an agenda to overturn the ways of God. Days of the Golden Calf. He looked down from the Supreme Court with the Ten Commandments in the hand as the Supreme Court struck down the Ten Commandments in the public square. He looked down on the podium in the House chamber when the officiant dedicated the new Congress to a pagan god Brahma. He looked down on America as it descended into apostasy, as he had looked down on Israel as it descended into apostasy on the day of the golden calf. The nation that had been founded after the pattern of ancient Israel had now fallen after the pattern of Israel's fall. It had turned from God and given itself to gods. Darkness had become light, light had become darkness. Sin was now holy, and holiness was sin. Everything was inverted, and Baal, the god of inversion, had done it. He had worked his dark magic, and the words of the prophets concerning ancient Israel now spoke to America and Western civilization. They had forgotten his name for Baal. That which had been consecrated to God at its inception was now possessed by his enemy. For it could not be forgotten that the name of Baal also meant the possessor. Sorry guys, I've got a bit of a cough. A tickle in my throat, a cough. I'm doing a detox. I'll explain after. Baal was the first. He opened the door, but he was not alone. He had a wife or mistress. We now move to the next of the returning spirits, the second god of the Dark Trinity, and the mystery of the Enchantress. Now, because that's a really short chapter, guys, I'm just going to go ahead and do the Enchantress, which is chapter 17. The second god of the Dark Trinity was a she. She was among the most potent of gods and among the oldest, having first appeared in ancient Suma, the goddess. She was so important among the gods of ancient Middle East that she was given the title Queen of Heaven. She was joined to the celestial lights to the moon, which some of her mythologies name her father, and to the sun, which was often named as her brother, but it was another celestial light which she was most associated, Venus. She was the goddess of sexuality. It was because of that connection that the planet Venus is associated with love. She was also the goddess of war and destruction. She was fiery, impetuous, impulsive, greedy, emotional, demanding, stormy, fierce, carnal, given to rage, romantic, vindictive, full of unbridled passion, insatiable sexual desire, and boundless pride. If denied the object of her desires, or if offended, she would become vengeful and violent and could wreak havoc and destruction. The transgressor. She was a breaker of rules, the trespasser of boundaries, and the transgressor of standards and conventions. She would demand that which belonged to others. In one myth, when the gods were unaware, she stole their sacred possessions. In another, she demanded entrance into the land of the dead and underworld and pounded on its gates, threatening to break them down if her will was refused. In another, she demanded that her gods give her the bull of heaven to bring revenge on her enemies, and threatened that if her demand was denied, she would release the dead into the world of the living. She was the goddess of prostitution. The prostitutes of ancient Mesopotamia looked to her as her patron and protector, and it was not beyond the goddess to take on the appearance, nature, and function and prostitute herself. Appearance, nature, and function, yeah. Seductress. She was a seducer, a temptress, the goddess who captivated, allured, and snatched away as the patron goddess of the tavern or alehouse. So she was associated with the partaking of alcohol, particularly of beer. She dwelled in the taverns and there mixed sexually with intoxication. In Sumerian mythology, her foremost lover was named Dumuzi. In Assyria and Babylon, he was known as Tammuz. It was her anger toward him that brought about his death. She then wept inconsolably over her loss, but she was never a faithful wife or lover. Tammuz was one of many. In the famous Mesopotamian poem, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the goddess even sought to seduce the story's hero, who responded by spurning her advances. She was the goddess of sexual promiscuity. Enchantress. Her images were everywhere in clay idols and stone reliefs. She often appeared as naked or as a woman revealing herself. She often appeared next to her symbols, the moon or crescent, the sun and her star, which was associated with the planet Venus, and she was often depicted in her function as goddess of war, brandishing weapons and entering into combat. It was undoubtedly because of her role that she was associated with the lion. It would often appear in her depictions as symbols of her ferocity and power. She was also an enchantress, a sorceress, a goddess of magic and spells. She specialised in love magic, the enchantment that conjured desire or that altered one's affections and behaviour. She seized and possessed her worshippers. She moved and spoke through her priestesses, who served her as her vessels. Priests and prostitutes. Her cult reflected her nature. Her worship was saturated with carnality, sensuality, and often sexuality. Ancient writings speak of her temples as akin to houses of prostitution. It's believed that every year on the 10th day of the Mesopotamian New Year's festival of Akitu, the Babylonian kings would perform ritual sex acts in her temple. Whether these acts involved a consummation of sexual union or rather a symbolic form of union is still debated. This would take place through the goddess's high priestess, who would act as her surrogate. Her ritualized temple sex was not confined to kings and high priestesses. According to the writings of an ancient Greek historian Herodotus, the women of Babylonia were compelled by religious custom to sit in the temples of the goddess and perform the function of prostitutes, having relations with a stranger in exchange for money. According to Herodotus, every woman of the land was compelled to perform the act at least once in her life. From such practices come the concepts of sacred sex and temple prostitution and cult prostitution and sacred prostitute. All these were especially connected to Ishtar. Some things might be expected of a deity who was so linked to prostitutes or prostitute herself, and yet it went still further. Even writers of ancient times, though familiar with the practice of her cult, described them as disgraceful and infamous. Her proclivity to flout conventions and break rules would make her the goddess of those on the fringes of society. Ishtar. She was among the most ubiquitous and protean of the deities. She was able to modify her appearance or trappings to adapt to new peoples, cultures, and lands. In the Bible, she is called Ashtoreth. She is also spoken of in the plural form of her name, Ashtaroth. As was Baal, she was everywhere. She manifested in differing forms in differing cities, regions, and lands, and her idols could be found throughout the Middle Eastern world. In Canaanite mythology, she was connected to Baal and appears often as his wife or consort. Her influence was so great and so pervasive that one can see facets of her nature, her roles, her functions, and attributes in a myriad of goddesses from the Middle East, the Mediterranean, and beyond. In the Canaanite, the West Semitic world, she was called Astarte. The Sumerians called her Inanna. In Assyria, Babylon, and much of Mesopotamian world, she was known as Ishtar. To the Greeks, she became Aphrodite. At the same time, her young lover, Dumuzi or Tammuz, became the god Adonis, and to the Romans she became the goddess Venus. Thus the planet behind the star of Ishtar would be named after the goddess's Roman name. Ishtar in exile. Gosh, I can't speak. We will refer to her as a single goddess and spirit, though her other names will at times appear in this book. The goddess will most often be called by her most famous of her Mesopotamian names, Ishtar. When the Christian faith entered the Roman and Middle Eastern world, the goddess, along with other deities and spirits, was cast out. In an age that saw the covenant of marriage as a sacred and sexuality as a gift exclusively given and belonging to that covenant, a principality and cult devoted to carnal desire and unbridled sexuality could not be maintained. The goddess went into exile. But what if she was to come back? What if Ishtar was to return to the modern world and specifically to America? What would happen? Could she set in motion a transformation just as massive and critical as that set in motion by Baal, or even more so? The next one is the Enchantress returns. I think I should have kept those two chapters together, but hey, you never know how it's going to play out. It's only 12 minutes, so I might go ahead and read it, but I just want to say, I think most definitely she's returned. You know, you can see today the amount of sensuality and sexuality that is out there in women these days is crazy. It's, you know, it's not about being conservative anymore and, you know, covering your body and honoring yourself and God with it. It's everything's just out there, and it's so common. It's so strange to be like that. And I'm not saying I've always been perfect. I mean, gosh, when I was a young lady going out, I was just, you know, wearing trousers and had my belly showing and stuff. So I'm not judging anybody. You know, everybody needs to evolve and seek the Lord, and that's when the change takes place. I'm a living testimony to that. But at the same time, I can remember my mum always telling me, if you have your legs on show, then you cover everywhere up. Like you always, you never wear a skirt above your knees. And my mum would always like drill this into us growing up, that, you know, you're not to put your body on show. But yeah, there was a moment in my life where I would, like say, one night I went out wearing trousers and a crop top, and I can remember that fully. And so I'm not going to sit here like I've been perfect. No, you know, but that's the grace of God, you know. Who I am now is so far removed. You know, when you say you're born, you're a new creation. That's just so true. So I don't sit here looking down on others. I'm just making a comment as to say you can see it in society. You can see the traits of this goddess in women today. So yeah, unless we seek the Lord, you know, it's just going to get worse. You know, even down to like the women that are in the music industry, is all they want you to do is defile yourself and just do things that is not becoming of a woman. Like, we should not be following these people. They are wicked. They are just instruments of Satan. So yeah, we should not be following them. And I tell my daughter all the time, You follow the Lord. You follow the Lord. This is all we follow, the Lord. And we don't look to the world for anything. We don't follow after these people. I've been just recently teaching them on the music and, you know, the things that they are exposed to in, you know, what we watch and stuff like that. So they have an explanation of why I'm so strict in what they're exposed to, because I'm protecting them. And we do need to protect our children. Oh, wow, do we? So let's see how long this chapter is. And I'm going to go ahead and read the Enchantress Returns. How did the second principality enter into America and the West? To find the answer, we must look back at how she gained entrance into ancient Israel. Mrs. Bale. It was early on, soon after the Israelites settled in the land, that they began turning to other gods. The first record of its turning is found in the book of Judges. The passage speaks first of the Israelites' embrace of Baalim or Baals. Then it says this: they forsook the Lord and served Baal and the Ashtoreths. From the very beginning, the two gods, Baal and Ashtoreth or Ishtar, were linked together. The connection reappears later on in the book of Judges. Then the children of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord and served the Baals and Ashtoreths. It appears as well in the book of 1 Samuel when people realized the consequences of their apostasy. Then they cried out to the Lord and said, we have sinned because we have forsaken the Lord and served the Baals and Ashtoreths. Actually, that's the chapter of the Bible I'm reading at the moment. The Baal-Ashtoreth connection. Why are the two joined together? The fact that they could be portrayed in their mythologies as married or as lovers would account for some of it. But the connection between the two gods is deeper and one that transcends mythology. So too is the order in which their names appear. It is Baal who is first, then Ashtoreth. Israel first turned to Baal and then to Ashtoreth. Baal leads to Ashtoreth. Baal represented the nations turning away from God and to the physical, the material, the carnal, and the sensual. It was this that opened the door for the entrance of Ashtoreth or Ishtar, and with it unbridled sexuality, licentiousness, and decadence. The worship of Baal had elements of these things, but Ashtoreth was their incarnation. The one god ushered in the other, and the one spirit the next. The god of apostasy ushered in the goddess of sexual licentiousness and debauchery. Ishtar comes to America. What would this mean for America and the West? If America's turning from God began to manifest in the early 1960s, and with it the entrance of Baal, we would then expect this to be followed by the entrance of Ashtoreth or Ishtar. And what would then happen in the wake of that entrance? We would expect a transformation to begin that would alter the realm of sexuality. With the goddess's entrance, we would expect biblical standards and ethics surrounding sexuality and marriage to begin to erode. We'd expect the moral foundations and values that had undergirded Western civilization for nearly 2,000 years to begin overturning. In short, we'd expect there to be a revolution in the realm of sexuality, a sexual revolution. Ishtar and the sexual revolution. And this is exactly what took place. Shortly after America's turning from God began manifesting in the early 1960s, another transformation took place in the realm of sexuality. It would be one of the central defining moments of the 1960s, and it would continue long after the decade was over. It would not stop until it had transformed American and Western culture beyond recognition. The effect of the goddess's return to America could be summed up in 3 words: the sexual revolution. There had been another sexual revolution. It took place in ancient times in the Greco-Roman world. It was the revolution by which biblical sexual ethics, ideals, and morality replaced those of the pagan world. It happened at the time the gods were cast out of Western civilization. The two phenomena were connected. The casting out of the gods included the casting out of Roman Venus, the Greek Aphrodite, and the Phoenician Astarte, and the Mesopotamian Ishtar. All the varied manifestations of the goddess of sexuality, it was in the goddess's departure that biblical values replaced pagan ones, and the first sexual revolution took place. But if the goddess should return, it would mean that pagan sexual values would now overturn biblical ones. In other words, the sexual revolution that took place in America and Western civilization in the late 20th century was the reversing of the sexual revolution that took place in ancient times. It was the advent of the gospel that broke the goddess's spell. But now, upon her return, the spell would be cast again on America, the West, and the world. The spell of the sorceress. The sexual revolution was another dimension of the paganization of America and Western civilizations. The values it represented were pagan values, and the sexuality was pagan sexuality. What was branded as the new morality was in actuality an old morality. An ancient morality, the morality of the gods. The reappearance of that morality was a sign that departed spirits had returned to the house. The aim of the goddess was to destroy the morality and faith by which she expelled. To do that, she would have to take a Christian nation and civilization that, with regard to sexuality and marriage, upheld biblical morality and practices and led it into embracing pagan morality and practices. To do that, as with the return of Baal, she would have to work incrementally, step by step and progressively. But it was the spirit of Ishtar, and to Ishtar especially belong the powers of seduction and spells. So in recasting her ancient spell, she would begin the seduction of America and the modern world. What would it mean if America was to come under the spell of the ancient goddess? Well, the great seduction is the next chapter. Wow, that was eye-opening, guys. And like I say, you can see how it plays out today. And you can also see who worships these goddesses. There's a lot of talk of goddess now. And when I was in the New Age stuff, people would say that they're even like a reincarnation of a certain goddess. Like it's something to be proud of. But obviously they're doing it in ignorance. So we just pray that their eyes are opened and they see the truth. But Satan can cast a real blindness over you. So yeah, it's hard to reach them. But I thank the good Lord that he reached and took me out of that place, because it was not good. It was so dark and I was never at peace. So yes, you can see that playing out today for sure. It's just our job as women of God to spread the counter message of what it is to be a woman of God, and how that may look, and what it means to us in our life. We all are to do that. The Bible tells us, these things. Women are to teach the younger women, in ways of how to keep the house, how to serve the Lord. I've got a video coming up actually that the Lord put on my heart yesterday. So I really want to discuss that with you guys when I was reading the scripture. It was a personal message to me, but I also think it can benefit all of us, because it's definitely one for us all. So praise the Lord for that. And I don't mind taking correction from the Lord. In fact, it needs to happen for me to be able to serve him better. So I take that willingly. So thank you guys for watching. I will be back with more videos soon. I hope you've enjoyed these, and like I say, if you want to share them, please do. If you want to like, please like, and yeah, do what the Lord puts on your heart, guys. And yeah, we will see where we go. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all soon. Bye guys.